Over the last couple of years, there have been a decent amount of movies and TV shows using a very interesting concept. But with this concept being used more often, I've been seeing more and more videos arguing that this concept is bad. This is Brian from the Fishy Podcast. I will be your guide as we search for the answer. So let's ponder the question. Are multiversal stories a problem? Multiversal stories have been popular for a very long time, but in recent years, every movie and TV show has a different way to explain it. So first, let's start with a few different ways movies explain the multiverse. The MCU uses the term multiverse and timelines loosely. When a decision is made that is not a predetermined one by the TVA steps in and prunes the time. You know what? I'm just gonna let Miss Minix explain it.
Welcome to the Time Variance Authority. I'm Miss Minix, and it's my job to catch you up in the sacred timeline. Now, the timekeepers protect and preserve the proper flow of time for everyone and everything. But sometimes people like you veer off the path the timekeepers created. We call those variants. Maybe you started an uprising, or were just late for work. Whatever it was, stepping off your path created a nexus event. The TVA has stepped in to fix your mistake and set time back on its predetermined path. Now that your actions have left you without a place on the timeline, you must stand trial for your offenses. So sit tight and we'll get you in front of a judge in no time.
Wait. Why don't you just prune the timeline with the variant did it instead of taking the variant to stand trial just to send him to the edge of time with everything that was pruned? Everything Everywhere All at Once Multiverse works similarly, just without a TVA. Every time a decision is made, a branch reality is made, but each universe is only explained as a universe and not a timeline. Think of the concept like flipping a coin. If you flip a coin, it's said that the universe splits in half to create two universes, one where it lands on heads and the other universe where it lands on tails. For shows like CW Flash, the multiverse and timelines are different. Going back in time changes the present timeline, but doesn't change, alter, or create alternate universes.
When I saved her, I created a new reality, a new timeline.
Whenever you go back in time, it breaks. You can reset the timeline. You can try to fix it. But no matter how hard you try, it's never going to be exactly how it was.
Similar to Back to the Future.
Great Scott!
Into the Spider-Verse's multiverse doesn't allow one to be outside their own dimension for long. So that is why it differs a bit from the other versions of this concept. Into the Spider-Verse's universe stands alone and separate from each other. But just like the others, can be traversed by science shenanigans.
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
So with those explanations out of the way, now we can answer the question. Like I said, multiversal stories have been very popular, but they've gotten a lot of criticism for things like, oh, there are no stakes. If you kill this character, you could just bring them back. Sure, maybe, but only if that's what the story allows. In Marvel's and Flash's multiverse, if you kill a character, they can bring them back. I mean, just look at Harrison Wells. Now, when you do it a bunch of times, it gets old and stale and it turns into not caring because we'll get another Wells next season. But what made this work for the first few seasons was that each Wells acted and behaved differently. That's what makes a multiverse so amazing. We get to see, what if Barry Allen never became Flash? That's the thing I didn't like about Loki. We heard about different universes, but we didn't get to see and experience them. Look at Evelyn in Everything Everywhere All at Once. We got to experience different lives she could have had, but if you took a version of her from another universe and put her into the main one, she would be out of place. How she interacts with everyone will be different. Superman and Lois showcase this really well with John Henry and Lois. If you have a story where the characters in other universes act the same, then yeah, there would be no stakes, because if you kill someone on Earth 52, then you can grab someone from Earth 616. But if they don't act the same, and you bring that person over, they aren't going to have the same connection with each other. John Henry, Lois Lane, Harrison Wells, Spider-Man. If your multiverse is like Rick and Morty, then yeah, you could just hop over to the next universe and it won't matter. Again, when the concept is used correctly, it makes the multiverse have stakes. That's not to say that the show is bad just because they take a Rick and Morty approach. It just doesn't work on everything. Multiversal stories are not the problem. The problem is that it's multiverse in name only. What's the point of having a multiverse if we're not going to see the other worlds or our characters learning something from another version of themselves? Imagine No Way Home with 3 Tom Holland Spider-Man, all the same age, all the same experiences. Would you rather have that or the No Way Home we got with all 3 Spider-Men, all different ages and different experiences? That makes the story interesting and dynamic. They can play off of each other. Now, you could think what you want about this movie, but I think Everything Everywhere All at Once takes full advantage of the multiverse. Every time a decision is made, an alternate universe is created. When the husband wanted to talk to Evelyn, the main character, he first had to present her with a choice. That choice created an alternate universe that she could body hop to later. The villain could turn any object to anything she wanted by using the multiverse. Some really crazy stuff happens in this movie, and I would say this is a very good use of the multiverse. Side note, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness also had body hopping between multiverses, but I think Everything Everywhere All at Once does it better. In every reality, she was the same person, but she had a different life because she did one thing differently. Now let's address the next critique. If you kill this character, then you can just bring them back. No problem. Like I said before, you can with the Rick and Morty approach, but I think there's a very good example on how to handle this. Let's look at Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. For context, in Avengers Infinity War, Thanos threw Gamora off a mountain in exchange for the Soul Stone. Then, in Avengers Endgame, somehow, Gamora returned. Okay, but seriously, Gamora returned by traveling to the future with past Thanos. Remember, this is a Gamora from before she met the Guardians. After Thanos was defeated, Gamora stayed in the present, her future.
Time travel! What?
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 picks up a few months later, I think. I'm still kind of confused about the timeline post-Endgame. Anyway, the Guardians are now running nowhere and Gamora has joined the Ravagers. Whenever Peter Quill and Gamora interact, it's not the same as it was before. Quill still has feelings for Gamora, but Gamora doesn't because she hasn't experienced Volume 1 and 2. Going from working alongside Thanos straight to joining the Ravagers would build a different Gamora than we had previously. She didn't care about any of the Guardians besides Nebula because she didn't fight alongside them on Xandar or get the Power Stone from Ronan or have to fight a living planet. It could have been very easy for Marvel to bring her back to the character she was in Volume 2 by having her get explained everything and looking at some photos like they did in Loki. But unlike Loki, they didn't take the easy way out. This Gamora was different, and she didn't rebuild the connection she had with the Guardians. And Quill had to accept that the Gamora he knew was gone. Loki could have done the same thing. Instead of having him watch a replay of his life and reverting back to the same character, I think they should have went the opposite direction. Because this isn't Ragnarok Infinity Wars Loki. This is 2012 Avengers Loki. This guy is dangerous. They should have had him see himself in the video and it makes him say, oh well, I'm not going to let that happen to me because I'm smarter or something. And then at some point he betrays the TVA and maybe, I don't know, he becomes President Loki, which would have allowed us to see just the kind of mastermind he is. And this wouldn't even change the ending. King would still offer our Loki the same deal. You kill me, start the cycle over again, or you let me live and I give you the life you want in another timeline. Loki decides not to kill him because if he kills him, he would have to deal with all these other Kang variants. This would fit in with Loki running away from certain things, like his reaction to seeing Hulk in Ragnarok.
I have to get off this planet.
I hope this makes sense, and I'm not saying doing it exactly like this would work, but a kind of variation I think would have been better. And I'm actually a fan of the Loki series. With Evelyn, we got to see everything, everywhere, all at once. But in Loki, we see everything one time. First, we're on Pompeii. Then Lamentis, then Roxxon. Why should I care about Roxxon? Last time I checked, Cloak and Dagger isn't canon, and that wouldn't matter anyway because that's centuries in the future. And the Lomentus sequences could have been in a Guardians movie. Loki is more planet hopping than time travel multiverse hopping. So of course some people say, why should I care? Because they shouldn't. These places hold no weight. In this story, they should. This is where Rick and Morty has the advantage. There are times when the planet gets destroyed or the status quo changes. That's when they hop into the next world for a clean slate. This works in Rick and Morty because the emphasis isn't placed on where they are because everything's treated as normal. On the other hand, the places we go to in Loki are treated as big deals. If they would have used nowhere, Xandar, or even New York, that would have made us care because we know those places. Even Rick and Morty, we care somewhat about the destruction of the planet. Loki is trapped in a place we don't care about in a random part of the galaxy going through an apocalypse. Phineas and Ferb handles this much better. In the movie called Phineas and Ferb Across the Second Dimension, there's a sequence that requires them to run through a bunch of different dimensions before returning to their own. These dimensions don't matter, but the focus isn't the dimensions, the focus is on getting back home. You could argue the same for Loki and that he's just trying to get home, but the difference is the whole show uses the idea of hiding in apocalypses so it could hold more weight if these apocalypses happen in places we're familiar with. What if we had him go to Asgard or Jotunheim because he grew up there and he knew a way off the planet? Like a backdoor of sorts. I mean, isn't that how he kept outsmarting Heimdall and Thor? Look, I'm a huge fan of this show, so don't get me wrong. I'm just trying to explain how you could fix some of these critiques. Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness also uses the multiverse. In the movie, Doctor Strange and America Chavez are running away from Wanda, who is trying to use America Chavez in order to see her children. One thing about this movie is characters not being used to their fullest and characters not being used at all. You have the Illuminati being used instead of a multiversal team or a time travel team. You could have had Excalibur, the Britain Corps, the Council of Reeds, just to name a few. Using the multiverse and you don't have a multiversal team, like what's that all about? Into the Spider-Verse also had these different versions of the characters interact, and they interacted in a way that they didn't really interact with other people. It's not the exact same. Okay, while these critiques are valid, we can't write off the whole concept because they decide to poorly execute it or take a Rick and Morty approach. There are 4 multiversal movies coming out between this year and next year, and I hope they're up to the task. Anyway, I hope that makes sense. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Do you agree, disagree? Like, comment, subscribe, and until next time.
Later, skaters.